Welcome to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainer Society and the ultimate destination for athletic training professionals, students, and educators looking to learn more about sports medicine and athletic training. In each episode, we'll dive headfirst into conversations with experts in the field, bringing you insights, stories, and cutting-edge information about athletic training and sports medicine. This week on Inside Athletic Training, we welcome in Mark Vinson, an athletic trainer and medical coordinator of special projects with the Tampa Bay Rays. Enjoy the show. All right, Mark, welcome to the Inside Athletic Training podcast. We are super excited to have you on. I look forward to talking all things athletic training with you and learning more about your career and your time in baseball. You're currently a medical coordinator of special projects with the Tampa Bay Rays. You spent a ton of time with the Rays organization. We'll get into all those great things you've accomplished in your career and your current role. But first, I want to share a bit with the listeners about where you came from. So share a bit about where you're from, what kind of sports you were into growing up, and also how you found that passion for athletic training.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. And I'm looking forward. I've enjoyed listening to the podcast that you've done and hearing the stories of fellow athletic trainers throughout the game. So happy to be on here. But I'm originally from a small town in Virginia called Harrisburg. And, you know, some people are like, oh, I've heard of that. Well, it's not Harrisonburg, but it's just kind of in the far southwest corner of Virginia, kind of near Blacksburg. That's kind of the closest town that people have heard of, but really rural, blue collar area. And it actually, though, is kind of in close proximity to a lot of the Appalachian League teams that were previously in the minor league system for a lot of major league affiliates. So that kind of ties in, I guess, further down the road as we get into my story. But, growing up, just part of that generation, we play outdoors.
Sure.
Whether it's, in the fall, it was football, in the winter, it was basketball, and in the spring, it was baseball. So those are kind of the three things that I did growing up, and kind of gravitated towards baseball. Was a little bit better at that, playing into, high school, and really just being from a small area in a small town, we obviously didn't have an athletic trainer at our high school or any of the schools. But I think my first exposure to that may have been just looking at some media guides from, the University of Virginia, like their basketball program kind of listed, the athletic trainers in there, and had a little excerpt on the athletic training room and some of the things they did. And I remember reading those and thinking, that was kind of neat. And so, fast forward, I graduated from high school and actually went to the University of Virginia fresh out of high school, and had a guy that was from my high school, was a little bit older than me, that was eventually went to physical therapy school. But during that time, he was involved in the athletic training program at the University of Virginia. And so when I first got into town, in college, kind of met up with him, and, he said, hey, you ought to volunteer to be a student athletic trainer in the athletic training room. So my first year, as in the fall, I kind of signed up for that, and never really looked back in terms of just getting more and more involved in it. And it was something that I knew kind of right away once I got into it, that it was kind of a career path that I would be really interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting to hear how kind of the location and geographical place that people are from kind of impacts their careers. And, it's great to hear that you had exposure, not so much in high school, but in your college days to athletic training, which kind of led you to your entire career. You've been so successful in your time with the Rays. But before that, obviously, like you mentioned, were the college days. When you got to college and you were kind of experimenting with what you were going to do with your life and your career, did you know that baseball was the sport you wanted to work in athletic training for, or did you kind of get a lot of exposure to different sports and make your decision from that point on?
Well, I definitely didn't see professional baseball being an avenue that I would pursue. I worked football and baseball at the University of Virginia my first couple years, and as a student athletic trainer, really with baseball, they had a graduate assistant, but by my second year at the University of Virginia, I was traveling with the team and, kind of the primary contact. This was back in the mid 90s. And so, it was kind of, it's certainly something that wouldn't be done today. In today's environment, is not having a certified athletic trainer, but those were a little bit different times in the collegiate settings. And looking back at it now, I really didn't know anything what I was doing other than some just basic first aid and things like that I could probably provide. But that kind of led me after my second year at the University of Virginia. I got really, being around baseball, felt that passion again for it, and just, being around the team, really missed being in a team setting. And so that summer I went back to a small NAI school and, talked to the coach and kind of did a tryout and ended up transferring there and playing baseball my last 2 years there at Bluefield. It was Bluefield College at the time. It's now Bluefield University, but played my last 2 years, and the mindset was I could always go back to the University of Virginia and get my master's degree. They had a really good master's athletic training program at that point in time, and much to a little bit of a shock to the system, to like my parents and things like that. University of Virginia being a pretty prestigious public institution. But I was always pretty confident that I could go back and get my master's degree there. And honestly, back in those days, I really thought my career path would probably be more something like working in a collegiate setting, possibly teaching and things like that. So.
And during those early days, in college, and even when you broke into the minor leagues with the Texas Rangers, which we'll get into here in a bit, I know a lot of our guests have mentioned having a mentor or someone to show them the ropes, just figuring out how athletic training actually works, was extremely important to their development. Did you have any specific role models that really had a big impact on your career in athletic training?
Yeah, I mean, there were tons, because like I said, I mean, I was constantly looking for, how to get better, how to improve. And there were just numerous people from the, collegiate world to once I got into professional baseball that became mentors. And, in college at the University of Virginia, it was a guy named Joe Geek, NATA Hall of Famer, and also Ethan Saliva, who's also, still at the University of Virginia now, and they were very instrumental in just, teaching me. Both those guys have forgotten well more about athletic training than I'll ever learn. But then I moved to Bluefield, and there was our head athletic trainer there was a guy by the name of Kurt Brown. And he really gave me a lot of autonomy being, at a small NAI school. We had a lot of interaction, a lot of responsibility, traveling and covering practices, games, and things like that. And so getting that clinical experience in college, I think that was something that was really helpful as I moved into the professional realm. But, we can get in, on the professional side of things. I've had a ton of mentors up and along the way. When I was first hired by the Rangers, Frank Neville, who's now with the Milwaukee Brewers, but he was the minor league coordinator there, and he actually hired me and gave me my first opportunity in professional baseball. So I'll always be thankful, for that with Frank, and he was there my first 2 years before Jamie Reed and Kevin Harmon came along to take over on the Rangers. And those were both two guys that were really instrumental, and I considered, great mentors for me in my early years of professional baseball.
Yeah, anyone that knows Frank or Jamie or Kevin, three amazing guys. So I'm sure it was an awesome experience getting to learn from them with your time with the Rangers, and I'm sure prepared you for your career after that with amazing advice. So wondering, looking back on your career, a lot of our listeners are college students who would love to be in your position one day, would love to spend almost a decade in the big leagues like you did. So I'm wondering what advice you might have for those college students. Is there something that you would recommend they do during school, or a personality trait to work towards that would kind of make them a great fit for professional baseball athletic training?
I think my biggest piece of advice, if I could just, for someone that's aspiring to get into professional baseball or is really in the early stages of their professional baseball career as an athletic trainer, I would just say, don't get in it just to be in the big leagues. It's great to have long-term goals. There's nothing wrong with that, with wanting to make it to the big leagues. But, if you're really not present at the level that you're at, and all you're doing is focusing on the next step or the next, level ahead of you, or getting to the big leagues, it can be a frustrating grind, and you can it's almost counterproductive in a way. I think just really being present, doing the best job that you can, and really just having that desire to learn and grow each and every day as an athletic trainer is the most important thing you can do in professional baseball.
And that leads me to our next question about exactly that. Like you mentioned, just the ability to be present when you're in the minor leagues. I know, you've made it to the big leagues. A number of people don't, however, and a lot of people, could spend 20, even 30 years as a minor league athletic trainer. Not saying there's absolutely anything wrong with that. But if there are aspirations to get to the big league, can be discouraging, disappointing. So when you were working your way through with Texas and with Tampa Bay, what did you do to kind of remind yourself and to work towards staying present and just being in the moment where you were in the minor leagues, rather than focusing on, hey, I got to get to the big leagues immediately? What was your strategy there?
Yeah, my mindset was always just, kind of put your head down and work hard and do the best that you could do. And I think people will take notice of that. I always had the mindset each year that I just wanted to put myself in a position that if an opportunity came for a promotion or to move up the ladder, that I put myself in the best possible position to do that. And, there's certainly luck involved along the way, but I think just having that mindset of being a little bit patient, but at the same time, having that desire to get better and improve, and really just focusing on making an intentional effort to, get better at your craft each and every day.
Yeah, that's great advice. And we heard that same sentiment from Taylor Bennett with the Mariners, who said, if you do your work and you get better, you'll be noticed. And then that's what matters, is the quality of your work and your effort. So great to hear you echo that statement. Well, I want to get into a bit about your journey through professional baseball. One of the most interesting stories we hear from all of our guests is talking about how they broke into the game. We all know that there's such high demand to work in professional sports. If you don't want to do it, the guy right next to you will do it. And there's so many people looking to break in. So tell us a bit about the story, how you broke in with the Rangers and professional baseball, and any tips you might have for younger students looking to get into the game.
Yeah, well, as I finished graduate school, still was kind of unclear exactly, what I wanted to do. I took a job out of graduate school and was working in a clinic in the morning, and then would go out to a local high school in the afternoon, which it was I think there were a lot of things that I took away from that experience working in a physical therapy clinic, from a rehab setting and standpoint, and just seeing, certain things I really hadn't been that exposed to, during my college journey there. But I knew after about a year and a half of that, I kind of had the sense that, there really wasn't a long-term future in that. And the ceiling was, pretty limited in terms of, what I could do with that as a career. And so I just started really looking on the NATA website back in those days. This was around 2000, but they had a website where they would just have job postings. And I remember there being a couple on there from some professional teams. And there was one, that caught my eye with the Texas Rangers. The assignment was going to be extended spring training, and then you would go to the Appalachian League in Pulaski, Virginia is where it was, is where the Appalachian League affiliate was, which was about, 30 minutes from where I grew up. And so I said, honestly, I just said, why don't I give this a shot? And really just sent a cold resume out, went to Frank Neville. I think in retrospect, I think my professional or my baseball experience, both playing and working in college with baseball, helped quite a bit. And the other thing was that Frank had actually been in the Orioles system and been an athletic trainer, minor league athletic trainer in Bluefield, West Virginia, with the Orioles Rookie Ball affiliate there. And so that was a point of connection there for us. Just made things a little bit easier to talk about going through the interview process. And sure enough, I got that job, started in the spring of 2001 and headed, to Port Charlotte, Florida, spent the year in extended spring training. And, when June came, the short season club was in Pulaski, and I actually lived at home with my parents because the salaries were pretty paltry back then. But I had the sense that, I was willing to take that risk and actually take a pay cut to work in professional baseball if it was something that I was passionate about and that, had a little bit better career path for me long term.
Yeah, definitely a lot of sacrifice that needs to be made when you're breaking into the game. Totally understand that. And then moving into that time you spent in the minor leagues, a lot of our guests have said how instrumental the minor league setting is for an athletic trainer who's just breaking into the game. You learn to, you make your mistakes without the spotlight. You learn from people who have been much more experienced than you, and really just get your hands wet in terms of how a professional ball club works and the athletic training side of things. Do you agree with that statement? And how was the time in the minor leagues for you in terms of your development moving on to your career?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I just remember literally driving down, arriving at the complex in Port Charlotte, Florida, that first day, and really not having much of an idea of what I'd kind of gotten myself into. Spent the rest of the workday there. You have your locker set up, and I thought that was just, kind of one of the coolest things ever. You walk in there and you have a locker with gear set up there, and you change and get ready and, work the rest of the day. I was dead tired by the end of the day, and just I remember thinking, man, I got to get up at 5:30 in the morning and do this all over again tomorrow. But in addition to Frank, we had a really good minor league staff there with Kyle Turner and Chris DeLucia, who are now with the Kansas City Royals, and Greg Harrell was our AAA athletic trainer there. And I really can't say enough about those guys and how they kind of took me in and helped me learn the ropes as a new guy in the system. And I'll always be, indebted to those guys and how they were able to kind of bring me along those first few days. And you think back, it can be kind of overwhelming when you walk into that clubhouse and see everything that's going on. But, it certainly turned out for me to be something that, sorry, you may have to cut this out because I'm
no problem. No problem. Feel free to keep going.
Kind of just losing track there, but
no worries.
But yeah, that was those times early on in my career. I certainly made a lot of mistakes, and that's kind of what the minor leagues are all about is a chance to gain experience. The key is, once you make those mistakes, you need to learn from that mistake, but it's important to have an environment where you're allowed to have some small errors and learn from those things. And so that's really how you learn and how you get better at your craft. I mean, I remember sitting down and trying to write out throwing programs for the first time and having to really struggle with some of the concepts that, you would use for injured pitchers and getting them back to pitch in a game situation. But after you do it, it's just a process of repetition and a little bit of trial and error, and you learn as you go.
Yeah, definitely a great group of guys that you mentioned, Kyle Turner, who's been with the Royals forever, Chris and Greg, and a lot of great mentors who showed you the ropes there. So I'm sure that was extremely helpful in the early days in the minor leagues with the Rangers there. Shifting gears a bit, after your time with the Rangers, you went back to Bluefield University, which you mentioned as the head athletic trainer, as an instructor as well. What prompted that move for you at that time in your career?
Well, yeah, after the 2004 season with the Rangers, we had since moved out to our spring training site out to Surprise, Arizona, where it is now. So being out there, and a lot of our minor league teams were based a little more on the West Coast. And so I really just came home that off season. My wife was in medical school at the time. And she had, put a ton of time and effort into the first couple years of medical school. And that was, I think, difficult for her just having me on the West Coast and the time change and things like that. But back in those days, with the salaries like they were, the off seasons were there was a little more freedom I would always get a job in the off season to kind of help offset some of the expenses of just, normal day-to-day living. And so as I came back that off season after the 2004 season, I had heard that the head athletic trainer had just left at Bluefield. And so I actually agreed to, on an interim basis to help them out. And after a month or so, they kind of asked me to stay and offered me a salary that was going to be a little bit better. I was certainly going to have the opportunity to be close to home and spend each night in my own bed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was attractive at the time. So I made the difficult decision, and I talked to Kevin Harmon at that point in time, and he was really cool about it. And he said, obviously you need to do what's best for you. And so I did that. And, again, about after a year and a half, I kind of had that longing to get back into baseball. Certainly missed, the camaraderie and things like that you develop with not only your coworkers, but the players themselves and just people around the clubhouse. And, my wife was starting to begin her clinical rotations and things like that. And so we had a heart-to-heart. And we talked about it, and, with her blessing, I went back and actually gave Kevin a call and said, hey, if you know of anybody that, is looking for an athletic trainer, I think I'm at a point where I'd like to get back in the game, really after just missing a season. And so as it worked out, they had just hired Matt Lucero away from the Tampa Bay Devil Rays at that point in time,
Mm-hmm.
to be their minor league coordinator. And so that created an opening at Double-A for the Rays. And, with Jamie and Kevin's connections coming from Tampa Bay, they were able to give a call over to the Rays. And at that point in time, it was actually Ken Crenshaw, who was still the head athletic trainer for the Devil
Mm-hmm.
Rays. Ken actually hired me as the Devil Rays. And then, within a few weeks, he had actually taken the job to go over to Arizona, where he's been since. But I mean, in that realm, Ron Porterfield took over as the head athletic trainer, and obviously spent a ton of time with Ron in my time with the Rays. And so that's kind of how I ended up with Tampa Bay. Went to Double-A Montgomery with them in 2006. Able to move up the next year to Triple-A in 2007 in Durham. And then after that, spent 3 years as the minor league coordinator. before getting to the major leagues in 2011.
Yeah, such an interesting ride, and cool to hear that you took a risk and jumped into the college aspect and just felt that need to get into the game, and just really shows the power of those relationships that you built and the respect you had from those guys who were able to put you in touch, and obviously moving into your time with the Rays, learning from guys like Ron Porterfield, the current PBATS president. Definitely cannot go wrong there. Ron's one of the greatest humans and top athletic trainers in the game. Moving on a bit to getting to the big leagues. So you mentioned in 2010 you became the assistant athletic trainer with Tampa Bay. Talk about what that was like for you when you took a risk, you jumped back into the game with the Rays, and then you ultimately got to the big leagues like so many aspire to do. What was that like for you at that time?
Yeah, I mean, so in 2010, in the late in the winter, Nick Paparessa, who was our third athletic trainer in the major league staff with the Rays, took the head job with the Oakland Athletics. And that opened up a position there for me to move up to the big leagues. And I think, for me, it was a 10-year run in the minor leagues. And I think looking back, I think that's, a pretty, maybe on average, something that I was, certainly fine with. I didn't feel like it was super fast or super slow. I enjoyed, all of my time in the minor leagues. I mean, being the coordinator is certainly a difficult role where your phone is going, nonstop. It's on 24/7. And so, to get that call from Ron and, to join the major league staff, it was certainly fulfilling in the sense of like, you felt like your hard work and your efforts had been recognized and it was kind of all worth it.
Yeah, definitely a cool story and awesome, I'm sure, to see all that work pay off. One thing I want to talk to you about, which is probably a proud moment for you and many of your colleagues that time, was the 2020 World Series run that you were a part of with the Rays. Talk to us a little bit about that experience. What was so special about that team, and just how that felt to kind of make it to the mountaintop of playoff baseball as an athletic trainer?
Well, as you know, and everyone that's listening knows that 2020 was certainly a unique year, not only in the world, but in professional sports especially. So it was certainly unique to have the opportunity to get to the World Series that year, albeit a little bit of a shortened season. And I think, looking back, there'll be a lot of things that I remember about that go beyond just, the baseball aspect of it. But, the opportunity to play in the World Series and to experience that is, I think, what everyone who works in professional baseball is, that's kind of the ultimate goal. And even though we didn't win, it was certainly something that, I'll remember for, the rest of my life. And, the players that were part of that and the staff that was involved in that run, it was something really special and something that, when you look back on your career, you'll definitely say, that's something that is a proud moment for me.
And then in 2021, you made a move into a new role with Tampa Bay, medical coordinator of special projects with the club. Talk to us a bit about your current role, more about your day-to-day, and kind of how the role came about and doing what you're doing today.
So, I mean, getting back to 2020 and the 2020 season, I mean, it had a profound effect on me, not just from, a baseball standpoint, but when we first kind of left spring training back in March, when the world kind of shut down, my wife, who's now a physician, we were living in St. Pete and she was working at Tampa General, and, surgeries were on hold. And so both of us were kind of forced to stay at home for, a large part of, a couple months there. And that really changed our perspective on just, we were both two people that were very career oriented. We've both been very focused on, getting to, the peak or the mountaintop of our professions. just having that opportunity to kind of sit down and spend time and, the normal baseball day-to-day life as a professional athletic trainer for a 7:00 game, you're going in, at noon, let's say, to the ballpark and, not leaving until, close to midnight back in those days before the pitch clock. And, games last a little bit longer. But, that was kind of in conflict with her schedule where she was getting up and going to the hospital early in the morning, and she would get back and go to bed. And so we were just kind of, like two ships passing in the night.
Mm-hmm.
And so really that time to spend together was, had an effect of, hey, we're chasing this goal and dream and, making great career choices and chasing money and things like that. And it just really put things in perspective of, time was certainly finite, and you never know how much time you have left. And so, we made the decision of not just like a knee-jerk reaction, but she started looking for a job closer to Virginia, where where we're both from, and we have family still. And so during the 2021 season, she actually took a job in Charlottesville, Virginia. And at the end of the season, I talked to Joe Binge, our head athletic trainer, and, told him this was a decision that, we were making for ourselves, and kind of came up with the thought of, if there's a role that I can help out with on a much, smaller scale, not doing the day-to-day, and possibly something that I'd been involved with in previously with the Rays, was helping in the MLB draft, the medical review process. And so we kind of just spitballed, and I give a lot of credit to Joe and to our front office staff for, really figuring out a way to let me stay involved in baseball, be with the Rays. What I do now on a day-to-day basis is during the summer, a lot of my time is spent, reviewing medical records for players that our scouting staff will send over. I go to the MLB Combine, which has started up in the last couple of years, which is kind of a big undertaking. MLB's done a great job with that in terms of organizing the event. But with that, there comes a ton of medical testing, MRIs to review in terms of MRI reports, things like that, I'll attend the draft combine with our team physicians, and we'll take a lot of the information that's compiled there and sift through that. So it's a little bit of an undertaking. The other thing I do is, during the course of the season, is I'll travel out to the affiliates, our minor league affiliates, and try to spend some time with our minor league athletic trainers. That's something that I found really rewarding, just to kind of see the day-to-day life of the minor league athletic trainers now compared to, when I came up through the ranks. I give them a ton of credit. The job that they do is very similar in a lot of ways, but there's a ton of differences and a ton more that those guys have to do, guys and gals have to do in an effort to just kind of maintain player health. So really my role on the player development side is just kind of being a sounding board. I've really worked to kind of develop those relationships with our minor league athletic trainers, as well as our, minor league staff and minor league players, getting to learn them again after being away from that for a few years in the big leagues. In addition to that, during the year, every week to 2 weeks, I will put together some educational content in the form of like new research articles or new news articles, podcasts, et cetera, that come out, and send them out to our medical staff, major league and minor league, just kind of in an effort to, continually learn, continually grow. I know as a minor league athletic trainer and a major league athletic trainer for that, your time is very valuable. And so in season, it's tough to always be disciplined to sit down search for research articles, search for, new and innovative information. And so that is kind of my role in terms of just trying to create an environment where we foster that professional development within our staff. And that's something I really enjoy doing, getting a chance to build relationships with our minor league athletic trainers and hopefully use some of my experience to help them out, whether they have a question regarding athletic training or just, whether it's a nuts and bolts issue in terms of relationships or logistics on the minor league side. So, again, I can't thank, the Rays enough for allowing me to do this and largely be working remotely, still be involved, with the organization.
Yeah, really interesting to hear kind of how you spent so much time in the big leagues and really got to the mountaintop, like you said, and then to have the courage to put your family first, but still find a way to stay in the game is awesome, and I'm super happy for you about that. You mentioned it would be possible without the staff in Tampa. You talked a little bit about Joe Bench, the head athletic trainer there, but I want to give you a couple minutes now on the show to kind of recognize the staff in Tampa Bay and the people you get to work with every day.
Oh, absolutely, man. They deserve a ton of credit. And I really hope I don't leave anybody out, but, along with Joe, Mike Sandoval is our assistant athletic trainer. Mike has a ton of experience from his time as a major league athletic trainer with the Pirates. Aaron Scott, also an assistant athletic trainer with our major league club. Wilson Dietz is our physical therapist with our major league club. Brad Epstein is our rehab coordinator and physical therapist. Joel Smith, who worked a ton of years in the minor leagues, is now with our major league club as a rehab athletic trainer. Shin Fukuda is our acupuncturist / assistant athletic trainer. Ray Allen, massage therapist. Hamari Watanabe is also a massage therapist with our major league staff. And those guys just, obviously our major league staff has a ton of resources in the terms of personnel. But those guys are great teammates and, great guys to work with on a day-to-day basis. And on the player development side, can't say enough about Marty Brinker, our affiliate medical coordinator, Scott Thurston, who is our complex medical coordinator, overseeing things at our minor league complex. Chris Russell, KT are our athletic trainers in Durham. They deserve a ton of credit. James Ramsdale, our Montgomery athletic trainer. Ruben Santiago in Bowling Green. Haley Williams, she's our Charleston athletic trainer. Nick Fasciano is our FCL athletic trainer. Brianna Tovar is in the FCL as well. Kendall Crowell is an athletic trainer in the FCL. And then we have a couple of physical therapists that work at the complex on the minor league side, Sarah Clay and Colleen Hammond. And I definitely don't want to leave out our Dominican Academy staff. The job those guys do is very important, and it often is easy to overlook because they're kind of a little bit out of sight, out of mind. But Oscar Arango is our Latin American medical administrator, and our staff down there includes Ever Perez, Pablo Pacheco, Cesar Navarro, and we have a new physical therapist, Jordan Hayek, that works down in the Dominican. And again, hats off to all of them for the job they do and the hours they put in and day out.
Yeah, I think it's great to hear you name everybody because it goes to show to our listeners and to anybody interested in athletic training and in sports, just how many people it takes to complete an organization, how many people it takes in baseball to make sure players are healthy at each affiliate, and in Dominican and in Florida and Arizona. So really cool to hear you recognize those people. And I know it's important to you to help develop and make sure that everybody has the opportunities they deserve. So appreciate you sharing that. Well, Mark, it's been great talking with you. To wrap up today's show, we're going to finish with a quick Q&A segment that we call Extra Bases. So I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions. I'll let you share some insight with our listeners about some of your favorite things in athletic training and baseball. So we'll kick it off at first base. a lot of answers have been the Rays athletic training room. So I'm curious to get your take here. What's your favorite athletic training room to work in the big leagues?
I'm definitely aware of the visiting athletic training room over there at Tropicana Field. And so that's a testament to our visiting clubhouse staff over there. They do a great job. But I guess for me, I know Atlanta has been mentioned quite a bit. And so, it's hard to argue with that. It's a great facility to work at on the road, and, plenty of space, nice hydro area, things like that. And probably most important is that you're just a couple steps away from the food area, which is always key for the athletes.
Yeah, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, really the winners for our athletic training room question on the show so far. So moving on to second base, I always say you guys have one of the most unique jobs where you're actually with the players during the game in the dugout. You spent, a decade in the dugouts on the road and at the Trop. So what's your favorite big league stadium to watch a game from the dugout?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to go with one that maybe is a little unconventional, but I really like Camden Yards. Just for me, just having the dugout is really like close to the field of play, and it's like you're kind of really close to the action. Mm-hmm. It's got a really good backdrop there in right field with the warehouse out there. So I always enjoyed just watching a game from the dugout in Camden Yards. It's a well-designed dugout. It's not too deep, not too high. The fence in front of the dugout is just the right height, so you're not trying to stoop down or stand on your tiptoes to see the action. It was just really a good spot to view a game.
Yeah, one thing I've learned a lot from talking to you and your colleagues across the league is how important the actual setup of the dugout can be to actually watching a game, but also to you guys doing your job. So interesting to hear that. And then Camden Yards, obviously a historic ballpark. In that same realm, moving on to third base, you're from a small town, like you mentioned, living in Virginia now. But when you were on the road with the club, what were some of your favorite cities to visit?
Yeah, and it's been said, I think, on here before, but Chicago in the summer is just a really awesome place to go. Mm-hmm. Especially being in Florida for so many years and, not really being able to walk outside much in the summer. You really don't want to spend a ton of time outside. So anytime we got a chance to go to a little bit cooler climate during the summer and just really enjoy the time before you get to the ballpark, Chicago is a tough place to beat.
Mm-hmm. And moving on to home plate, the last question for today. Always love to hear answers to this one. We talked a bit about you breaking into the big leagues and how meaningful and important and just how good that felt for you. During that first year in the big leagues, did you have a welcome to Major League Baseball moment at some point?
Yeah, I think it really happened in spring training in my first season. When we would go to spring training games, we would send one of the Major League staff, and then, the other two athletic trainers would stay back and work with the players that stayed back at the complex. And so one of my first few Major League road trips as a Major League staff member was going down to Fort Myers to play against the Twins. And so I just remember early on in the game, there was an incident where a foul ball hit our catcher, in an unfortunate place. And, he's, at that point you're a little bit helpless, but you run out onto the field and you are taking stock of the situation and trying to assess as best you can. And I just remember kind of stepping back at that point in time. The batter at that time happened to say something, just, kind of make us a joke or whatever. And I look up and it's like Jim Tomei and, the background is like the fans. It was really just kind of like a moment out of a movie almost, where I kind of really just stopped and was able to take in like the stands and everything going on around me. And, from that point on, I never really, if I had to go out on the field to evaluate an injury, whether it was like a Yankee Stadium or wherever it may be, I never really kind of factored in or really cared anything about what was going on in the crowd. But I just remember that first time I went out, and even though it was a spring training facility, there were a ton of people there, and it was just kind of a kind of a surreal moment and something that kind of sticks out in my mind for sure.
Yeah, that's a good thing that you were able to kind of sit there and soak it in. I'm sure things are moving so fast at that point during your first year. So it's great to hear that. Well, Mark, thanks so much for joining the show. Again, we really appreciate your time, your dedication to athletic training and PBATs. Hope you enjoy some time away this offseason. Wish you, Joe, Mike, and the rest of the gang best of luck moving into 2024.
Thanks, Sam. Always a pleasure talking to you. And like I said, enjoy the podcast.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Inside Athletic Training. We hope you've gained valuable insights, inspiration, and knowledge to fuel your athletic training journey. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite platform. And also, stay connected with us on pbats.com for more news about athletic training and sports medicine.